I think the main theme was a contest between what many of the people at the conference called Theology of Religions, which speaks from within a religion, in this case Christianity, usually more particularly Roman Catholicism, addressing other religions as other, versus comparative theology, which tries to have a neutral stance as much as possible, so as to be able to address the others in their own terms. And the question is whether the bias associated with the first, where one reads the others through the truth and categories of one's own position, would prevent any serious engagement with the others, as would be required for genuine mission. So I think that most people would agree that real mission means addressing people where they are and as who they are, beginning by accepting them, and then offering what one's own religion, this Christianity, has to offer. This is as opposed to telling people what our religion is when it doesn't mean anything to them, and assuming that we know who they are because we can judge them through the categories of our religion. And so there were many different positions expressed with difficulties. Yes, I think the comparative theology needs to develop in two different directions at once. You want to compare two different traditions in some respect. That is, in respect of what they believe about God, or what they believe about the human condition, or something like that. But you don't know what the category of comparison really is until you begin to investigate what the religions say about it. So instead of starting with the category and then trying to squeeze everybody in, and the category is going to turn out to be your own religion, it's going to be your own religion's categories, you see where that doesn't fit. And you then reformulate the category so that you have to learn as much about the other religion and what it would say about the ground rules for comparison as you do for what it would say about the questions with which you begin. So you learn about the relations among the traditions as you learn about how they don't fit your initial categories. And there's never an ending place. You're always modifying so as to eliminate bias. You never can eliminate bias completely. But that gives you more of a chance to be able to relate to other people in other traditions. Also, as soon as you begin to use large categories, you see that the notion of a religion collapses. So there are many forms of Christianity, many forms of Buddhism. People at this conference were preoccupied with Judaism and Israel theology because of the history between Germany and the Jews. Paying some attention to Islam because Germany now has many more Muslims working here. In the United States, the differences between Protestants and Catholics and Jews are short. There still are misunderstandings, but they operate in the same world. The other religions are those that come from East Asia, Confucianism, Chinese Buddhism, because we have so many immigrants from East Asia, some of whom come here as Buddhists or Confucians, some as Christian Buddhists or Christian Confucians. But they're interested in figuring out how much of Christianity in its fundamental metaphors have to be changed in order to be able to sing the right song to the other. All of the Abrahamic religions speak of God as a person, even when the theologians like Thomas Aquinas or Maimonides know that God is not a person in any ordinary sense. But the East Asian religions do not. They believe there are lots of supernatural beings, but they aren't God. And so the notion of ultimate reality addressing us, wanting something for us, trying to build a divine kingdom, all of that language can be common among Christianity and Judaism and Islam, but it would not be common for dealing with Taoists or Buddhists or Confucians. So there's a different kind of comparison there. And I think that it struck me at this conference that a lot of people did not recognize how metaphorical the language of God speaking and acting and addressing us is. You wouldn't realize how metaphorical that is until you see alternatives that don't employ those metaphors at all. So it struck me as an American outsider to much of this conversation that there was not half as much worry about disagreement as people thought there was. There's so much agreement to begin with, and so little appreciation, from my perspective, of how metaphorical it is, and therefore how problematic. Metaphors engage, but they can be problematic if you don't know that they're metaphors. Well, the contribution I tried to make to the conference early on, during the first day, was to give a theory of religion that starts off by asking some philosophic questions about the nature of ultimate reality. And I take ultimate reality to be a kind of empty a term to be filled in by various religions. And Judaism, Christianity, and Islam employ personalistic metaphors, or God as king metaphors, building a kingdom. God is not the big guy in the sky. The cosmos is trillions of years old, huge, and metaphors of the kingdom apply only to human realities, so far as we know. But people seem unaware of the fact that there was a larger environment that needs to be taken into account if you think of God as creator. And all of those traditions think of God as creator. In South Asian traditions, like Hinduism and Buddhism, they don't develop the notion of person as much as the notion of consciousness as the basic metaphor. And what they do with the notion of consciousness is eliminate the things that seem important for persons, such as will, desire, love, things of that sort, in order to get to a fundamental reality that is not attached. And in East Asian traditions, such as Confucianism and Taoism, the metaphors of spontaneity, of heaven bringing order, not by divine command, but because of the spontaneous production of order in chaos. Those are the ones that are developed. The metaphors come from common experience. We all know what buds opening in the spring mean. And we all can do experiments with consciousness where you try to empty your conscious mind of content, you know, what a person is. And you, in every tradition, these get pushed toward more transcendent notions, but they carry behind their own metaphoric significance. So, if a Christian were trying to explain the love of God, or better yet, witness to the love of God, to someone for whom loving is not the chief metaphor for ultimate reality, it would be a hard sell. Now, what is the alternative? The production of good things, the spontaneous creation of order that harmonizes, the language of divine intent for East Asian and South Asian traditions can't be right. That can't be what's ultimate. As the South Asian traditions put it, there are lots of gods, but they're all subject to the law of karma, and therefore they're not ultimate. And so if you want to say that, that the South Asian or East Asian equivalents of God as ultimate reality are not personal, then the missionary effort has to be something else. And I think that that requires very serious comparative work. I've given some large generalizations just now, but that has to be worked out in detail with particular texts. And then when you get people on both sides who understand something fairly deep about both sides, you can then begin to sing the song of your own tradition, and somebody else could hear it, because you could begin to translate it. So, and I think that that is a metaphor that a lot of people at this conference would like, that we're witnessing to the love of God in Jesus that we Christians feel sometimes inadequately, but feel to be very important. And that's what we would like to share. But one needs to pay attention to what the other is before you can make that song heard. And it also helps to be able to address other people in such a way that you're not imposing your categories on them, but getting them to be interested so they ask you, as opposed to you telling them. So I think in the conference there's a tension between wanting to do what I just said, that is, get to know the other as other, not impose our categories, but be able to, as many people said, to love them for who they are before we try to change them. In fact, changing them probably is a way not to love them, and therefore is a way to contradict the message that we Christians would like to convey about the importance of love. A tension between that, on the one hand, and performing Christianity. We can perform Christianity, but that assumes that everybody else is in our perspective. And they're not in our perspective. We have to learn to be in their perspective without losing a sense of our own identity. And as soon as you do that, you begin to ask questions of your perspective that had not been asked before. So your own tradition grows as you begin to see it from the outside and new questions are asked. That surely has been true of Christianity from the beginning. Jesus was a rural Galilean. Paul, who was the first one to write about him, was an urban Hellenized Jew. The early apostles translated the meaning of Jesus' life into what would make sense for Europeans, that is, Greeks and Italians and Spaniards and later Germans. By legend, the Apostle Thomas went to India, and if he didn't do it, somebody else did pretty quick. And that means translating it into the culture of India. Same thing was true with North Africa and going into South Africa. So the Bible has always been translated, and when it's translated, it moves into a different culture. So the missionary effort is inseparable from the the identity of Christianity as a growing religion, which has to reinvent itself somewhat every time it makes a transition. And of course that scares the bejesus out of people. Will we lose our identity? And the answer is yes. But Christianity wouldn't be all that interesting if Jesus were nothing but a rural Galilean, right?